They'll tell you that healing feels peaceful, but they also don't tell you that it feels isolating, especially when your standards change faster than your circles. Self awareness makes you stop engaging, especially in connections that require you to ignore red flags, over explaining your boundaries, or tolerate inconsistency. And when you stop doing that, access to you change. Also, this phase isn't loneliness, it's recalibration. You're no longer who you were, but you haven't fully built the life that matches your awareness yet. So it feels quiet, and quiet can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to chaos. But the space is necessary. It's where discernment develops. It's where self respect comes natural instead of forced. If you hear, I just want to let you know you're not falling behind, you're leveling up. And if you need structure through this phase, this self awareness playbook was created just for you. Send it to somebody who might need it, or even save it for yourself. The link is in my bio. If you
The dramatic and drastic change that comes when you have to start sacrificing old ways and habits in order to get to a more prosperous place of living. What's your initial thoughts about what she said first?
No, I mean I agree with what she said. Most of the majority of it, you start changing things, get uncomfortable. That means you're growing. So she's spot on.
Why why do you think people look at change as a punishment? Like, all right, you spent 5 years being problematic, running the street. Within that 5 years, you accumulate a history, a past, and a future. And it might not have all been pleasant. Matter of fact, a lot of it wasn't pleasant. And it puts you in a season where you had to look at what's going on and say, I'm tired of this. I don't want this no more. But that requires you to have a different perspective on how you're living, what you're investing your time and your energy and your money into. But that also comes with having to deal with the very fact that with cutting off those ties, you can't entertain those things anymore. You have to find other ways to cultivate that new direction that you're going in more properly. Why do you think people feel so uncomfortable with the change itself, like it's a bad thing?
Well, I mean, depending on who you're talking to, it can be a bad thing. And the reason why is, excuse me, for people that don't have an identity, now you tell them to change. If they were being a chameleon or copying or emulating somebody else's style, and you asking them to change, what are they going to change to? You got to provide them a platform or a blueprint so they can become the carbon copy or the chameleon of what they're trying to change to next. And that's the biggest issue that you have is people don't have an identity, man. That's why they're able to create avatars. That's why you see people taking pictures with, Photoshop or the self enhancement things to make their, photos look a lot better than what they actually are. Because people just aren't happy being a version of themselves, and they would have to explain that why they are who they are and why they haven't progressed. And it's easier for me to pretend to be something else versus to tell you why I'm not trying to be a better version of myself, which typically boils down to lack of accountability, being lazy, not wanting to put the effort into it, and then wanting that quick return. And that's the problem with everybody nowadays. They want that quick return. Nobody want to put the work in.
I've had conversations with people who would get angry with me because I would say to them, look, you got to put that down. You don't like it, but How can you say you want this, but you still going towards it? It don't make no sense. And then you'll snap at me because I'm telling you that ain't it. You just prolonging it. Like you're holding on to it as much as possible, knowing that this ain't did you no good at all. And you got to make a decision. Do you really want to let go of it, or do you want to use it as a crutch, as an excuse, so that you don't have to develop the attitude and the personality and the characteristics that you so desire? Like how much do you really want it? Are you willing to let them people go? Are you willing to stop watching certain things on social media? Are you willing to pick up that book? Are you willing to take constructive criticism? Are you open to the idea of, I don't know, being in that isolation for X amount of time because you're accustomed to having people around you all day, or you're accustomed to people being on your phone line, texting you and all that. But that shift requires you not to have that around you. So what's next? So what do you want? Honestly, you said it could be looked at as a bad thing. So what's the difference? Are you talking about someone who is just lying to themselves and they're basically mimicking someone else versus someone who is actually going cold turkey? They know who they are, but they just don't. They haven't figured out how to hone in and craft those pieces of them properly. But at least they're not trying to go and copy and paste someone else's whole personality. Like, what do you mean by there's a good and a bad side to it?
Man, you what's the question? What do you mean?
You said it could be looked at as good and bad. What's the difference between someone who is trying to actually work on themselves without adopting another person's personality versus someone who is?
Well, I mean, somebody who's actually putting the effort into it. That means at some point you mentioned constructive criticism or feedback. At some point, somebody must have shared a like, a dislike, or something that that maybe they could have they could do that could possibly put that relationship in a better position to grow, to be nurtured. But if they're not choosing to do the work, then they're not choosing to put that relationship in a better place. Because you can copy off of somebody else and copy the way they do things, but the problem is now your response won't be genuine. So now you're copying off of somebody else's. You're retrofitting your reaction to somebody else, but the reaction won't fit the action that happens. So that's what happens when you copy somebody else's style. You can mimic somebody else all you want, but it takes away from that human ability, that humanistic feeling of somebody doing something to cause an effect. It might be delayed. You might not know how to respond because you're pretending to be in a capacity that you're not necessarily in. So as they're engaging with you, you just maybe just sitting there and not responding to how they're thinking you're going to reciprocate that type of energy because you don't know how to. You're pretending you're in a gray area that you're not necessarily familiar with. That could be the negative part of it.
A lot of people don't like isolation. I prefer it. I don't need a lot of energies around me because a lot of people they don't have the best intentions and they're carrying things with them that might be detrimental to my own walk. Like they could be having a whole bunch of different demons with them from other people that they hang around with, um, opening doors that they shouldn't be opening, inviting things in that they shouldn't be inviting in, and it's so much traffic and noise that could be a distraction to what I'm doing. I prefer my solitude. That solitude, it helps me refine some stuff. Helps me sit and really think about what I'm doing, what I'm saying, what I'm going to do moving forward. How do I approach the next step by step in the day, knowing that every hour is not promised. So I'm just counting off on the clock. All right, what do I do in the next 5 minutes? What do I do in the next 10 minutes? Check off this box. Check off that box. All right, is this person speaking on anything of value? Am I really going to regret cutting this person off? Am I really going to regret walking away from this? Am I really going to struggle or starve because I didn't pick up this 250 calorie piece of chocolate or whatever the case may be? If you are somebody who is getting through something, a breakup, or you're struggling with an addiction or a habit, or you just surround yourself with people who give out horrible advice and you're used to being around them. So that noise, you're so accustomed to it that when it gets quiet, that you don't know what to do with yourself. It's not really a bad thing. I said everything I just said just to say it's not really a bad thing. You're used to traffic, but that traffic ain't did nothing for you positive. But when it gets quiet, you're left with your thoughts. You're left listening to your own thoughts. You have to deal with your own stuff. And I think that's probably a part of the problem with isolation. We're too codependent on other people. Is isolation a bad thing?
Yeah, I totally disagree with everything you just said. Too many. That's the problem right now. Is everybody think they can do everything on their own. People aren't out there figuring out how to problem solve, how to socialize and engage with other people. You can do so much by yourself, then everybody wouldn't be in such a fucked up place that they're in right now. The problem is people don't want feedback, don't want constructive criticism, and don't want to figure out how to coexist and commingle with other people. It takes a tribe. It's not about people being individuals and being by themselves. That's the easy way out. The difficult thing to do is figure out how to work around with other personalities. The difficult thing is how to figure out what skills you got, and how do we build a team and how do we become successful. You being by yourself and self-isolating, all you're doing is sharing your same shitty thoughts to yourself. You don't have anybody to bounce those thoughts off of. You don't have any checks and balances. And then you come out of that cocoon, that cave, and then you think your thoughts are good to go, and they're just in the same situation you were before you went in there. You got to have other people around you, because again, it's all about checks and balances, and that's why again they say still start sharpen steel. The thing is like the young lady said in the video, is you got to use discernment as far as for picking and choosing the type of people that you have around. So you got to become better at knowing who you are as an individual and who you can build with, not necessarily who you can seclude yourself and just try to figure out on your own. That shit don't work. You need to figure out who you can build with, who you can be in a group with, and how you can benefit off, and again, how you can balance each other out. It takes balance. You got to have that yin and that yang. It's not just a yang, it ain't just a yin. So yeah, self-isolation is the absolute worst thing you can do. Self-isolation leads to self-sabotage. You're talking yourself out of doing stuff. If everybody was so great at being their own wingman and holding themselves accountable, everybody be doing great, and everybody ain't doing great. So I definitely wouldn't put that type of dangerous rhetoric out into the ether.
Well, you also can't say that everybody that's in your circle is meant to be in your circle to give you advice.
Well, if that's what you got from what I said, I think you missed everything I just said.
No.
I'm just saying that you don't even have to repeat that, because I just said you have to use discernment and picking and choosing the people around you. So that means you can't have everybody in your circle. So that's all I'm saying is discernment is what you need to be doing. And I think people need to become better at using the tools and the resources that they have. That's just what it is. Everybody has the same tools and resources, the same 24 hours in a day, the same structure that you go about using it. You just got to become better at using it and stop thinking everybody's out to get you. Maybe it may be yourself and your bad decision making.
My point is, most of the way that she worded it, I might have gotten a different interpretation from it, because everybody don't use discernment or don't know how to hone on a discernment. Most of us get to 30, 40, 50 years old and just now figuring out that they need to cut people off, that they need to not listen to this person. There's people right now that's still holding on to folks that they shouldn't be holding on to right now, that they think are their friends and think that they got their best interests at heart. You know what I'm saying? And to your point, yeah, you should have people around you that's going to give you different perspectives, and they're going to bounce ideas off of you that's going to help you and challenge you. Of course. But we're referring to people who don't know what the fuck they doing. We referring to people who are absolutely traumatized, or they damaged to the point to where they just don't know how to do none of that shit at all.
I'm not referring to those people. If that's what they're doing, then they made a conscious decision along the way to choose not to do so. I'm referring to the people that have the wherewithal and knowledge to make a conscious decision and deal with the accountability. I'm not referring to anybody who's not taking accountability for their actions and not being properly. If you can use whatever scenario you want. If you're in that type of situation, then you probably made a choice not to listen repetitively over and over and over again. Then that just means you haven't learned yet. So eventually you will. You just haven't got there yet. Once you get to rock bottom, to the point that you're tired of trusting that you know better than other people. Because that's the problem. Is so many people out. Americans traditionally are just narcissistic by trait, and that's just the point. So you have to identify what the traits that you have, and then what's good for you and what's not good for you. So I'm not making excuses for any more people that's out there. People out there making bad decisions, and then once you get tired of making those bad decisions, you'll either change or you'll just continue making those decisions until they don't benefit you anymore. But the people that's out there that's trying to do better, they'll go through those things, and then eventually they'll learn and realize, you know what, the stove is hot. Let me find another path. But if they haven't figured it out yet, it just ain't their time. That's all.
Yeah, I knew what you was talking about. You talking about people who already understand the assignment.
No, I'm talking about people that's trying to figure it out. You ain't got to understand the assignment, but you're trying to figure it out. You don't understand the assignment, but you know going left ain't right. I can't keep doing this, but I got to figure it out. And they're trying to figure it out. They can fail, because failing is part of the process. Everybody's process is not the same. Some will be shorter, some will be longer, but as long as you're trying to figure out the process. I'm not, you mentioned earlier about the people that just can't get it. Well, I'm not talking about them. They probably need to tune into something else. I'm talking to the people that have a general understanding of what's going on and they want to do better. You can't do something with people that ain't coachable, man. That's just the reality of it. I wouldn't waste my time talking to people who aren't coachable. If you don't want to make a better decision to do things, you're probably not the ones to talk to. He said, how do we account for past experiences and the effects that linger within? Man, you just said it. Account for it. You have to self-identify that you're going through something. And a lot of people, they try to muscle through it. They try to push through it. Once you stop and identify that you're actually going through something, now you want to say, okay, all right, I'm going through something. What's the next step? And if nobody, and this is what he was saying, if nobody's around you in your group that can help you out, but you have to have the common sense and good judgment to say, this ain't the group for me. I got to find another group. And that's probably where we fall short at, is stepping outside the group because of the comfortability levels and going to seek that guidance and that knowledge from other places. But now you can't use that excuse because you got Google, you got all the, you got ChatGPT and all that stuff. It ain't the end all be all, but it's a better step than saying I don't know. So I would say going into that direction, and then you have to be willing to talk about the experiences that you went through. I talked to somebody the other day. They said they went through a traumatic experience over 20 years ago and didn't tell the person that they were with. and thought that was okay, and wonder why their relationship was, was kind of rocky and stuff. Well, if somebody don't want to share something that they went through over 20 years ago prior to being in a relationship with somebody, well, that's selfish and that's kind of foul. You know what I mean? But that's that individual mindset thinking versus saying, you know what, I just got with this person in a relationship. We're a team. What I'm bringing to the team can affect this other person. I should probably share this and then let them consider the fact that they want to continue to move forward or not if I moved on from that damage. But again, it goes back to communication. If people aren't doing that, then it ain't gonna work out. It's no different than going to apply for a job, or school or university. You have to get interviewed. You got to go through a rigorous process. You got to take your individual self that important as everybody else does and do the homework. If not, then those are the results you're gonna come out with.
Yeah, there's absolutely no way you can bring somebody into your life with all of that baggage if you ain't addressed it and then expect things to work out.
It happens, man.
Yeah, that's more or less where the angle I was coming from. With people who still they just fucking hard headed.
Right.
They like what you need to do, but you just want to hold on to the shit.
Right, and then play the victim again. That's what I'm saying, man. That's become the trend, man. It's easier to do that and then say, "Fuck it, let's start over again with a new group." But you're doing the same thing all over again, like he just asked. With the experiences that linger within. That's the narcissistic part of it. And that's what I say. That's what's become so common, man. Between the music, we listen to in America, the movies we listen to, just the business models. Everybody's the best, or just move on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. You know what I'm saying? You got a song that even, Jay-Z shit, on to the next one. Ain't nobody talking about putting in the work and self-reflecting, and then how do we build and how do we communicate and how do we organize? How do we come together? Nobody's talking about that. It's just fuck it, on to the next one. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, blah, 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 blah. And everybody's lying. It goes back to that again. Everybody's lying. You know what I mean? Pain and drama, yes, it is addictive, because the reason why is with the pain, you can gravitate towards that. Like the people that will get into fights all the time just because of the adrenaline rush, they want to absorb that pain. It wasn't even about winning the fight. They just wanted to get in the fight. The thrill, the rush of the violence, of the intensity, the pain. Just like it's no different if somebody's having sex and they're going through eroticism and all those other bondage and all those things. It's the same thing. It's just in a different format. Drama, same thing, because that's another form of validation. We're not having a communication or a dialogue, but the drama that's kicking up, that dopamine kicks in, the rush kicks in, and then that's validation. You're responding to me, whether it be negative or positive. Then that's why, again, it comes in where we keep having these conversations about narcissistic personalities, because now you see it in women, because they say, oh, I ain't taking this shit no more. I'm fighting back. I got big dick energy. You know what I'm saying? All the things they're trying to absorb and have as a man, they're trying to get that rush and that anxiety, that dopamine rush from the combativeness, until now you fight to see who's the bigger man in a relationship. You talked about that 3 or 4 times already on the pod. So
yeah. So there's different versions of isolation, right? The type of isolation that I'm referring to has nothing to do with cutting people off and you just going on an island and you being away from the entire fucking world. The type of you know what I'm saying? I ain't saying fuck everybody. My version of isolation is I know that these motherfuckers are toxic. They liars, they're manipulators, they don't mean me no good. I gotta get the fuck away from these people, and then I gotta reset so that what I want and what my boundaries are match the fucking people that are around me. Like if what I want doesn't match the people that I'm around, then I shouldn't have them around me at all. That's the direction that I'm leaning towards. That toxic, I'm just gonna run away from everything, and then I don't advise that shit either.
Yeah, that's more self-preservation than isolation, though.
Well, shit, if you walking around with spiritual HIV, I don't want that shit around me. Don't pass that shit on to me, my nigga. Fuck that. I don't like people be bro. People be dirty. They be dirty. People be dirty. They'll call like you ain't never had nobody called you with drama. They ain't never called you, man. All they do is trauma dump. All they try to do is trauma
You
dump.
know, now you know I got people that call and do that shit.
So you know, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like them the type of people I don't want that around me, man.
Right. I got you.
Don't use me. Don't try to sap my life force from me and then bounce and all that other stuff. Like
But I
this.
said self-preservation. Where the hell did you get spiritual HIV from?
I was being. I just had to be colorful with colorful with the word. That's all. Shit.
All right, bet. I got you.
But nah, you want people that's going to tell you the truth. I would rather you don't like you can't tell me I'm your friend or this, that, and the third, and you don't tell me the truth. And you're lying to me just to make me feel better. Like, come on, man.
I think it's weird if you don't want somebody around that's trying to give you some advice or you know what I mean. You know, sometimes you don't want to hear that shit, but you know, at least they trying to help you out and stay positive. You know what I mean? But I think it's weird if you don't want people around you like that. That's kind of weird.
Yeah. So moving forward, let's say you want to use this time to reflect and to get your stuff together. You want to use it to your advantage. What are some things that you can do? I mean, because all right, you're fresh to it. You acknowledge that this has to be done. You're not the latter of this conversation. You're actually trying to be proactive, but you're fresh to it. What are one or two things that you can do to kind of help you ease your way and usher in that other part of your life that you're trying to venture off into?
What you mean?
Like pick up a book, for example, or maybe you take your conversations that you used to have with X, Y, and Z, and then you take that same conversation and you actually transition it over to someone who has a different style.
Okay. Yeah. I got you. You said transition it over. I mean, you saying like to.
So you would in 1985, you would talk to Bone Quisha about this, that, and the third. But then in 1999, you start talking to Bartholomew about the same conversation.
Right.
Two different styles, two different experiences. One person is still in one season. The other person is an entirely different season. The transition from here to here, because you're so used to being around this, but you know that you have to do this. Like, how would you advise them to kind of just make their way over here without feeling so like on edge?
I mean, you know, it just depends on what they got going on, man. You're just trying to find that known, you know, to the unknown and tie it together. You know what I mean? So whatever they're familiar with, whatever they're not familiar with, try to bridge the gap. You know, and that's generally what you try to do when you hanging out with older people and younger people. And you know, you got three different generations in the room. You try to find something to bridge the gap. And an example would be like that, right? You know, two dudes and somebody in the chat room talking. So it would be like talking about LeBron, Jordan, and Kobe, because you're bridging the gap between three different generations right there. So same concept, just, you know, if it was if we were talking about talk shows, we'd be talking about Jerry Springer, Oprah, and Ricky Lake. You know what I'm saying? Across the spectrum, three different, you know, Jenny Jones, you know what I'm saying? Donahue, you got all those different categories, genres, and transition points. So depending on who you got in the room, because like everything else we do, it's all about your target audience. So you want to be able to stay even keel, and then the word I always like to use is balance. So keep that balance across the board and talk about that. Um, yeah, but the rapport is you got to figure out who the audience is before you establish the rapport. So that's important. You know who's out there in that audience. You know the demographic, whether it's 14 to 36 or 25 to 56. You know what I mean? You know that demographic. Like you mentioned the 80s. That's like saying, we're gonna show Eddie Murphy Raw, Dave Chappelle, or Chris Rock. You know what I mean? So again, you got to find that even keel, and then it's all about the person, the messenger. You got to find that message because it's all about the sender and receiver. I'm sending that information, they're receiving that information. So we just want to make sure that it's palatable.
You got to know your triggers too. You just left a war, a mental war. I mean, you just, you spent 3, 4, 10 years with this environment, right? So you got to know what triggers you, what causes you to backslide and all that stuff. Keywords, body language, attitude, all that stuff factor in. And then ask yourself, all right, I'm right here. This is the stuff I don't want anymore. So now I got to look at the things that actually are going to help. I need to start looking around. I need to start asking more questions. Oh, I know. I can call such and such, or I can, you definitely want to rechannel the way that you cultivate your thoughts, and what do you water your garden with. So if I know I get easily angry or tempted by something that I'm trying to get away from, you just don't put yourself in those environments anymore. You gotta change that altogether. You might not be able to do it right away, but over time, just start to break away from it. Other projects, yeah.
I think you hit the hammer on the nail just before you go too far, man. Is definitely what identifying with your triggers, man, because a lot of people don't know it. And in relationships, when you share information and people tend to use that information to tag you back and use that as a trigger, that's the stuff you got to be cognizant of. Because that's what a lot of people don't catch. It be that sneaky backhanded shit that the narcissists do. You share with them, tell them how you went to go do something and had a great time doing it. And it'll be like, oh, you did this the other day. You know what I mean? And then here you are, you confide in them, thinking you telling them genuinely how you feel, or they actually give a shit, asking how you feel, and you share it. Now you become walking on eggshells, and now you picking and choosing what you share. So you ain't necessarily lying, but you ain't necessarily giving all the information either, because you don't want to be held against you in the court of law, and whatever the situation is. And that's what's important about those triggers. And that's, like Shep said, is going with those unresolved issues and that lack of communication. And then the honesty, that's when you start using triggers to agitate people, to, as they say, bully people. You know what I mean? Bullying is just not on the playground. It happens in relationships and stuff as well, especially unhealthy ones. When people hold things over people's heads, grudges, resentment, and all those things come again without having the communication, the stuff that you all talked about earlier. But that's what's all used as triggers: the resentment, the anger, and all those things. So you have to be careful. Definitely identify what your triggers are. So when somebody's triggering you, or they're initiating or trying, you don't react. Because then that's when that happens in that relationship, when you start getting the fingers pointed at you, and it's called reactionary abuse. Now your reaction to somebody that's manipulating you because they're pressing your triggers. So again, it's important because the people, like you mentioned the girl earlier, not having the right people in your circle, the people in your circle will be there to trigger you and set you up at the most inopportune times. So now you're like the bad guy, or you look like the person that they're talking behind you, behind your back, and saying who you are. When in actuality, it's them playing Geppetto on the streams. So you got to be careful to who you have in your circle, who you share your information with, because you want to make sure that they're using that information for good, versus evil.
And don't be slick too. And you keep certain people around you because they they give you like a boost to your ego. Like you'll have your own little secret motive to hold on to them when you know damn good and well that you gotta go cold turkey with that shit too. But you holding on to them because they make you feel good in some type of area, but they still trigger you. You lying to yourself. They might not trigger you like the other person, but they have their own things too. And so, see, I've seen that so many times, man. And like I'm guilty of it myself. You hold on to people because of nostalgia, but in the back of your mind, you know that you need to cut these people off. You just need to let that go. Then you won't. So you can't really blame nobody else when you go through that repetitious door again and y'all get this screaming and yelling or whatever y'all do. Just leave it alone. Just leave it alone altogether. But it's not about giving them the middle finger. This is about you trying to improve it and be a better version of yourself if that's what you really want. And sometimes it's not going to be fun. I don't think that people understand that what's required is not necessarily equal to what was given. So if you are accustomed to all this noise around you, and then when it goes completely radio silent, you have to start pointing to yourself now. You have to find other ways to get that same dopamine hit. What's the word? Recalibrate. You got to recalibrate. So when you get on that road, your shocks don't be all messed up and underlined, and you start hitting these bumpy roads and these potholes, you don't catch a flat. I'm all for change. I'm all for taking time away from social media, away from distractions or things that's not really being conducive to you. I see no problem with it. Just make sure you don't alienate yourself. Like when you start cutting yourself off from family and stuff like that, that's a problem. If you can't do this and not snap on people because you going through that drought or that season where you ain't getting that cigarette or you can't tap that bottle, and so now you aggravated and irritable, that's a problem. It's not supposed to be looked at as a bad thing. It should be. So let me ask you one more question. How does a person address They're triggers. You don't have them people around you no more. You don't have that bottle. You don't have them Newports. But you still like you ain't got that stuff out of your system yet. But you still have to face it. So how do you address it? And then find victory over it. So
You
that
saying if you don't have the vices no more? Is that what you're talking about?
right. So you threw the pack in the trash. You flushed them down the toilet. Week 1, week 2 is past, but you still have to get that out your bloodstream and stuff like that. I'm just speaking literally and figuratively.
Right.
How do you keep a checklist of how you're handling and facing your triggers head on so that they don't have control over you no more?
Man, the easiest way is to keep a journal. Well, let me rephrase that. The easiest way is to find an accountability partner. That's why when they go to not therapy, but like to rehabilitation centers and things like that, some people have a sponsor. So that way, if they're going through something, they have somebody to call. So depending on what you want to, which program, that could be an accountability partner, or wingman. It's all the same thing. Is what happens. Typically, you assign another person because in case you can't go through it by yourself, you can call somebody. You know what I mean? So yeah, so accountability partner, sponsor, all those things above. And then, that's where typically that's where coaches come into play, is because not only can you call, but they can also provide you structure, a platform and a plan to help you and guide you along the way. But for the people that's out there just, trying to make it and get through it, find that one family member that you don't like that's always calling you out. You know what I mean? That's always talking trash about you. Not in a bad way, but in a way that you can tell they got good intentions. That it's probably that angry aunt or uncle, you know what I mean, that you don't like going around. But if nothing else, you just need somebody to hold you accountable, because somebody who's trying to cheer you on and just pat you on the back as you go through it, them the worst people. They're enabling you. You don't want somebody to enable you. You want somebody to hold you accountable. There's a difference. So that's generally what you want, man. It's if you're going through something and the people around you haven't called you out yet, you probably got a shitty group of friends around you. If they're the ones enabling you to continue going on, yeah, they're the problem. And they're probably going home and talking about you, and they're happy that they're doing better than you are. Because that happens all the time. Envy, jealousy.
Bang, bang.
They pat you on the back and say how great you're doing. Don't worry about him, girl. Or don't worry about that chick, man. And they either plotting on that chick, plotting on that guy, or they think you're doing better than you should be because you brag too much and you're entitled and you need to suffer a little bit. And this is their way of humbling. So they give you bad advice. That stuff happens. People are people. Even though people don't think they'll do that, they sit back, they look at you, and they plot on how to help you suffer. And it happens more in women's circles when they go to these little groups and they all shit on their husbands and talk about them. And they all sit around and say, oh, yeah. And they just talk shit about every husband and boyfriend in the group. And then there's always that one that they're envious of, and she don't appreciate him. And then they help her make a bad decision. And then now she's on her way out of a relationship. This shit happens all the time, man. And, if it's happening, you need to take some accountability. Do some self-evaluating. Stop going to other people first. Use yourself as a resource, as a basis, and then maybe bounce the ideas of other people's responses against yours. At least have a metric. So that way you got checks and balances to see how far off you may be or not be, depending on the level of respect you have for that person. But that's all I got, brother.
Hey, that was a lot. I hope it helps somebody, man. It's not boot camp. It can't be. It really just depends on you. I mean, it's your future. It's just what you want to do with your tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Everything ain't a bad thing. Even sometimes when it looks like it's a bad thing, it's not really a bad thing. It might be more of an opportunity than you actually think it is. It all really depends on how you look at it, though. So one door closes, there's always another one that opens. But what you should know is you don't have to stay stuck. Nobody has to stay stuck. If you stay stuck, it's because you choose to stay stuck. Period. And that could go in many different ways, man. The company you keep and how you treat yourself. And I don't think a lot of people love themselves the way they think they do. But that's a whole nother discussion. Shout outs to Chef G